Hello and welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning in to another episode this week. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and this week I'm really excited to be joined by Minnesota Lynx President of Business Operations, Carley Knox, to discuss the Lynx and notably their new Rebel Edition uniforms that debuted June 1st and will also showcase throughout the month of June on June 16th against Los Angeles, June 22nd versus Connecticut, and multiple times throughout July, August, and September. Before we jump into the conversation with Carley, let's recap what was an exciting weekend in Lynx basketball. Obviously, the celebratory weekend over the weekend. The Lynx opened up the weekend on June 9th, playing against Indiana. Many fans are aware of everything that took place that night, not only on the court but off the court. The Lynx not only played the Fever, which they ended up falling 2 points short to Indiana, but after the game and basically throughout the night and through the weekend, the Lynx honored and celebrated the All-25 team, which honors the top 25 players throughout franchise history. So we saw a lot of players such as Maya Moore, Simone Augustus, Sylvia Fowles. We'll get to Syl a little bit more in a minute. Obviously, Lindsay Whalen, Mama Taj, Candace Wiggins. There was, Renee Montgomery, who joined me last week on the podcast to talk a little bit about the upcoming ceremony that took place over the weekend. But overall, it was just a really fun weekend for fans to not only relive the quote unquote glory days, but kind of appreciate, celebrate, and honor those top 25 players who really molded what this franchise was able to accomplish throughout history, throughout the 25-year history of the franchise, but also during that dynasty run. A lot of teams or a lot of players, that we saw or that are a part of that All-25 team were a part of those dynasty runs. They were a part of those memorable moments, memorable championships, memorable wins that a lot of fans remember, not only Lynx fans, but WNBA fans. So that was a really cool ceremony. The Lynx honored them after the game with on-court ceremony or on-court celebration, introducing each player. They came to mid-court, hugged Cheryl Reeve, Glenn and Becky Taylor, the Lynx owners, Carley Knox, who joined me on the podcast that we'll get to in just a second. They got their all-25 jackets, which were really cool. They had their accomplishments and kind of accolades inside the jacket. How many championships they were a part of, if they were a part of any. And it was just a really cool moment to not only see those players come back, but also to sense their appreciation for what the organization did for them, and what kind of the memories they had to relive those glory days. I know I asked Maya Moore, Simone Augustus, and Sylvia Fowles what their favorite memory was from being a part of the Lynx, or what maybe one thing that they miss. And they all said, those personalities. They miss the fans. They miss being a part of the team. And those are the moments that a lot of people overlook. And it was kind of cool to see those players not only come back and recognize and look back on the accomplishments as players on the court, but also look back on the memories in the moments that they shared together as human beings and as teammates. So it was a really cool night on Friday night. Fans got to, the fans were in attendance for the game. They got to leave the game with a piece of the 2013, 2015, and 2017 championship court. So that was really cool giveaway from the Lynx to kind of give that symbol and give that part of a piece of the puzzle. They were all puzzle pieces, so it kind of signifies that everybody was a piece of the puzzle for those championship teams. So it was a great way to start off the weekend. And then on June 11th, the Lynx they ended the season on a bang, or ended the weekend on a bang. Excuse me. Sylvia Fowles night. As many people know, Syl she doesn't just get the nickname Sweet Syl for no reason. She is one of the best people, one of the best human beings, and who also happens to be one of the greatest players of the in WNBA history, and that the Lynx have ever seen and the WNBA has ever seen. So on Sunday night against LA, the Lynx were able to honor Sylvia Fowles by retiring her jersey. She becomes the fourth member of the organization to have her number retired and her jersey retired, joining the likes of Lindsay Whalen, Simone Augustus, Rebecca Brunson, Maya Moore will be following those, so it will come to 5. Who knows? There might be more, but those 5 players will end up in the rafters. But it was cool to see see Sil get her flowers, as everybody was saying. And kind of she's been very underrated throughout her career. The amount that she's accomplished, she's still very underrated. And she doesn't get her due diligence and doesn't get her recognition all the time. So it was great to see her at center stage, no pun intended, to get that recognition and to see everybody kind of halt what they're doing and not pay attention to what the team is doing and shift that all to Sylvia Fowles, because she absolutely deserves it. Big part of the franchise, big part of the organization, over the last few years since she arrived in 2015. But also, she will continue to be in the present and into the future as she continues to be a part of this organization moving forward, and as she hangs from the rafters for forever. So that was a great way to end the celebratory weekend for the Lynx. When it comes to on the court, the Lynx, I mentioned on Friday night, they fell short to Indiana. They kind of had a back and forth game, struggled in the first half in that game, ended up coming back late in the game, but they just couldn't get the job done. Ended up falling within 2 points to Indiana. It was yet another game that was decided within 5 points. Kind of put a little bit of a damper on a celebratory night, but ultimately it was a back and forth game. Minnesota just didn't. They weren't able to overcome things at the end. They just weren't able to get the shots and get the stops that they needed to down the stretch. And that's a sign of a young team. That's a sign of somebody or a team that hasn't been in those situations yet. Maybe they don't have that leader to kind of step up and maybe take over the reins in those situations. Like the likes of maybe a Sylvia Fowles would have done maybe last year. So the Lynx are still learning, and that's part of the process. That's gonna be the story all year long. But that was definitely on showcased in Friday night's loss to Indiana. And then to round out the weekend against the rival LA Sparks. It was once again a very back and forth game. Both teams were very evenly matched in the first half of that game. They ended up going to halftime tied up. LA ended up kind of stepping on the gas in the third quarter. It almost looked like it was out of reach in the third quarter. LA was up about 11 points. I think it was 11 points in the third quarter. And then all of a sudden, Minnesota, they kind of, I wouldn't say unexpectedly, but they kind of surprisingly turned things around. And I say that because the way they did it. The starters, with the exception of really, Nafisa Collier and maybe Tiffany Mitchell, a lot of the starters were sitting in that second half. And they Cheryl Reeve kind of went with the likes of Bridget Carlton, Nina Milic, Rachel Banham down the stretch. And she kind of rode that bench, which is something that we haven't really seen too often, especially down the stretch with this team. And that paid off big. Minnesota ended up at one point going on a 17-0 run. Ended up, over the last 3.5 minutes, they went on a 19-3 run, and they ended up coming back and winning the game. So it was not only the first win of the year, first win of the year at home, I should say, for the Lynx, which is obviously a great thing. It's only the second one of the year, but we're now 10 games into the year or 9 games into the year, so they're still learning, and the only way you can learn is to go through these moments. And they, Cheryl Reeve mentioned after the game on Sunday that she saw signs that this team is growing. Not only as in leadership roles down the stretch, she noted Nafisa Collier stepping up in the huddle as a leader and kind of raising her voice, which is a great sign. And she's somebody that needs to do that, down the stretch and moving forward. But Cheryl also mentioned the teams seem like they overcame something, and they grew from this game. That they learned from those other games. They learned from those other losses, and they're starting to figure out what it takes to cross that finish line now. And, it was a big win in many ways. Not only getting a win is positive, but the way they did it, the way they came back, the players that stepped up, those role players play a key part in the course of a game, like the Bridget Carltons, Rachel Banhams, and Nina Milich's. They need to step up when they get their time on the court, and they did that. And they put Cheryl in a spot where she had to play them down the stretch because they were playing so well, and that's a great problem to have. And it was also a great way to cap off another celebratory night that I mentioned with Sylvia Fowles night. It was great that they won one for Sil. Just an overall a great night. And overall a good weekend. If you're a Lynx fan, despite going one-on-one over the weekend, it was a fun weekend. And it was a cool kind of take a step back moment, and appreciate, what all has taken place, kind of where the organization is right now. And, it makes you appreciate those quote unquote glory days. And that's that's a good thing to have. And hopefully the Lynx can get back to that in the future. And that's their end goal, moving forward. They're kind of in a lull right now in a rebuilding phase, but that's how you build up for the next dynasty run. You got to go. Everybody has to go through these moments, and it was just a kind of a good moment to take a step back and appreciate everything that has been, and appreciate those players and coaches and everybody else that was a part of that. Moving into a new week, Minnesota goes on a two-game road trip here this week. They're gonna be playing LA right away in LA on Tuesday night, and then Friday night, and then they go to Las Vegas to round out the weekend. So Minnesota has a few days off here this week, and Cheryl Reeve mentioned that it'll be a good week to kind of shore things up and kind of work on things in practice before getting back on the road and going for a weekend road trip before ultimately coming home next week or the week after. With that said, let's jump right into things with, as I mentioned, with Carley Knox. Just a little bit of a disclaimer. We did record this podcast right before the celebratory weekend. So we did reference the upcoming celebratory weekend, but just know that we did record that this portion of the podcast right before that celebration. But great insight from Carley here, talking about the Rebel uniforms, the meaning behind it, Rebel Edition uniforms, and just it's more than just a jersey, and that's something that Carley will get into. But it is more than just a jersey; it has more meaning behind it, and I think that's a great thing with the alternate jerseys that the Lynx do have. They always make it with an intentional reason. There's always a reason behind it. There's always some sort of underlining meaning to every one of those jerseys. So without further ado, let's jump right into the podcast with Carley, and let's talk some Rebel Edition uniforms and all things Lynx. Carley, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
Doing great. Excited to finally have season here and to be celebrating so many wonderful things this season.
Yeah. Earlier this week, or I guess as June kicked off, the Lynx obviously debuted and announced the new Rebel Edition uniforms. First of all, what are your thoughts on the uniforms, and first off, how they turned out?
Yeah, we're so incredibly proud and excited about these brand new Nike Rebel Edition uniforms for us, and we feel like it pays proper homage to really what is rooted in our values, and that is using sport as a vehicle of change to fight for all marginalized groups, and using our voices to, whenever we see any sort of injustice, inequality, violence, etc., to really just unapologetically speak up and use our platform, and that ultimately it's so much bigger than basketball. And so we feel like that story is really being told in these jerseys, along with celebrating our on-court dynasty. But we also have an incredible legacy off the court as well, in terms of our advocacy and our activism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that you guys had mentioned was that 2016 press conference, and kind of, I don't want to say it started there, but it kind of started there as far as, the Lynx specific kind of activism in the public eye, or kind of tying it together with basketball. There's always been the off the court stuff with the players and the organization in general, but over time, what did that moment mean, and just kind of what has that evolved into since that 2016 time?
Yeah, and just to add a little bit of background for you, I feel this is always who we have been. I'll just give you an example in terms of fighting for all marginalized groups. We have been involved with Twin Cities Pride since the inception of our franchise. So for all 25 years, we've either been in the parade or we've been a part of the festival for the entire 25 years of the history of our franchise. And that's just one example, fighting for marriage equality when that came about, for trans rights, for equality in general, for people of color, you name it. We've always done this, but in 2016, that was obviously a very pivotal moment for us, when the murders happened, both here and in Louisiana. And it was just this incredible opportunity for us to speak up and use our voices. And, from Cheryl to our captains to our entire coaching staff, players, all of our staff, our fans, everyone was united and they were a part of this larger movement. And, we were the very first team in all the sports, men's, women's, college, pros, et cetera, to use our platform united in that way and to wear Black Lives Matter on our shirts. So what we did is we started the Change Starts With Us committee. And that was really rooted in our captain and our leadership and those really important players that were part of our dynasty. And then, from there, I think you saw that the shirt said change and accountability. And, in the press conference, we talked about having the uncomfortable conversations and holding ourselves accountable, holding our communities accountable and speaking up and using our voices. So, just really excited about the start of that Change Starts With Us committee, which obviously is reflected in these new jerseys, but it's who we always have been and it's who we always will be. And that those are just a few examples of our work in the community that we will always continue to do. That was just, one pretty significant example of that, but we continue to do that work every single day.
Yeah, and one thing that I've noticed, and I know a lot of other people have noticed too, throughout the history of the Lynx is that empowerment of the voices, whether that's activism, whether even just, being out in the community, being involved in the community, organization wise, player wise, coaches wise, whatever that may be. Yeah, how important is it to you guys as an organization to be able to give players, coaches, people in the organization in general, that platform to be able to use their voice and to kind of propel their voice in that manner?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly crucial, and really it starts with this even having a league is pretty much an act of activism.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important for us as we help to raise the next generation of not just girls, but boys as well, for them to see these incredible role models. And, again, in terms of buy-in, it's our players, our coaches, our business staff, our fans, like everybody is bought into this larger movement. And it's just really organic and authentic. And it's not something that we have to teach somebody when they get here. It's picking the right people that are bought into those values. And something that we're incredibly proud of. And, I feel like I get to come to work every day and help make the world a better place. And it has nothing to do with wins and losses. And yes, of course, it's amazing to win 4 championships in 7 years. But when people ask me about my career, I talk about how I'm even more proud of the work that we've done in the community and helping to bring about change.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to now these jerseys that reflect that, how do you believe it does reflect that? And, it kind of brings it maybe a little bit back into the forefront, not saying that it wasn't, but it brings it back a little bit to the forefront now that you have these jerseys to kind of, keep bringing that up. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it gives us another platform to tell that story and to bring light to it, because not enough people understand our kind of leading the way in this fight, especially in using our platform in sports, as a vehicle of change. And that not enough people understand, like the Lynx led the way across the W, but the Lynx also led the way across sports in general, being united as an entire franchise. Yes, there were individual players doing this type of work at that time, but we've always been doing this work. And so within the jerseys, obviously you'll see Change Starts With Us highlighted at the waistband. You'll also see a nod to our dynasty, like our incredible rich history on the court as well. You'll see the championship years on the back along with the trophies. And the Change Starts With Us moniker also is along the stripe, the green stripes on the side. So it goes all the way around the entire uniform. And there's really cool little nuggets along the way, as well as our 25th. It's our historic 25th season this year. So you'll see that as well across from what Nike calls the jock tag. So it's really a great way to, again, bring in our history and, that rich history, both on the court and off the court, and then tell that story of activism. And, I don't know if you've seen the video yet, but I thought the Unreal video was pretty awesome. It gave me chills, and it just reminds you of why we do what we do.
Yeah, it was cool to see the different generations, Katie Smith and Rebecca Brunson, go to Fee, kind of see the different stages in kind of the different jerseys and kind of the throwbacks. That was a very cool thing, and it's a very cool video.
With Katie too, yeah.
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
Thank
but
you.
when it comes to kind of the feedback, I know it's still early. The Lynx debuted the jerseys on June 1st against Connecticut. What's the feedback from the fans? What does everybody think of them?
I think did I lose you? Sorry about that. I just got a call. I think the feedback that I hear the most, the consistent message is they are fire. People just absolutely love them. I think the gear that we created along with it, with the Chain Starts With Us warm-up shirts, and all the sweatshirts and tees, are pretty awesome, and fans are really excited about it. So, I think this is something that people will be pumped up about. It's a different look for us, a different feel, and it celebrates all the right things and why we do what we do. So we're pretty excited about that. It's just one more thing that we get to celebrate this year, obviously, with our 25th. We are having a celebratory game next Friday, and bringing back our all 25 team. So our greatest in the history of the Lynx, 25 players, and all the big names that you can think of are actually confirmed and coming back. So first time you're going to see Maya Moore in, 4 or 5 years, which we're really excited about. Someone got to Sylvia Fowles, obviously Rebecca Brunson, Lindsay Whalen. You're going to see Nicole Oldie. I mean, it's a really, really fun group that's coming back. So that celebration game is on Friday next week. And we're going to be doing a big post-game honorary ceremony with some big surprises there. And then on June 11th, is all things Sylvia Fowles. We're retiring Sylvia's jersey post-game as well. And so that entire game will be dedicated to celebrating her storied career as well. So many, many fun things coming up, including Pride Night on June 22nd.
Mm-hmm. What's that weekend going to be like for you to kind of see all those players back, and obviously as well as seeing Sil on her night on Sunday, but as far as seeing all those players kind of back in one spot again on that Friday night game?
Amazing, and just reminding you of how blessed we were to be in the presence of such greatness, and not only on the court but just wonderful, really, really good people. And again, it reminds you of why you do what you do, and how blessed we were to win 4 championships in 7 years, to make playoffs 11 years in a row. I mean, it is truly one of the greatest dynasties in the history of sports. And so for, so many of those big name players to be coming back and be in the same venue all at one time, I think our fans are going to be absolutely elated. And I think it's going to be rocking in there both on Friday and Sunday next week.
Mm-hmm. Well, Carley, thank you for joining. Thank you for talking about the uniforms. I think they turned out great. They look great. I love the meaning behind them. So thank you for kind of breaking that down and kind of going a little deeper into the meaning behind them and everything that went into those jerseys, and as well as talking about everything else. I appreciate you taking some time.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your coverage and all of your support. And if there's anything we may have missed, please let me know how I can help, and appreciate you, and I'm sure we'll see you soon.
Thank you once again to Carley Knox for joining me on the podcast this week. It was a lot of great conversations with her, talking about, the Lynx Rebel Edition uniforms, the meaning behind it, and the upcoming, we noted in the podcast, the upcoming All 25 celebration, which was a fun weekend for all. I know Carley was the centerpiece to all of that, and kind of one of the centerpieces in making all of that happen. And it was really well done by the Lynx organization. And, Carley, like I said, Carley was a big part of that in kind of organizing and planning everything. So thanks again to Carley for taking time out of her schedule to join me. Like I said, it was a great conversation, and it's always great to chat with Carley, who does great work on the business side of things for the Lynx organization, Lynx and Wolves organization. I also want to give a shout out, as we do every week, to Jeremy Rushing for producing this podcast. And I also want to note, I always do this at the end of the podcast, note 2 of our partners. We actually have an additional one. I'll get to that here just in a second. But I want to give a shout out to our partners, Homage and Better Edge. Homage is a website that you can get all of your, you can get Lynx gear, you can get WNBA gear. You can get a lot of vintage gear and clothing items that are really awesome. I'm not just saying that. It's really cool to see all the vintage, merchandise that they have, as well as just modern merchandise. As far as, like I said, the Lynx gear, they have sweatshirts, t-shirts, WNBA gear. They have a bunch of t-shirts. Any team that you would like to see and find, you can do so there. A lot of great stuff and a lot of great, clothing items, which are extremely comfy. I absolutely love my shirts and sweatshirts that I have, and I'm definitely gonna be buying more. Which is bad for my bank account, but you should definitely go check them out and buy some for yourself. And please let me know what you think, because I'm curious what you guys think, and curious if you like them as much as me. You can find those links on our social media. You can find it on the website, or you can just visit homage.com. That's HOMAGE.com. And also the other one, Better Edge. Better Edge is one of my favorite betting apps. I like to do different competitions, on the WNBA games or the schedule that might be taking place that night. Let's say there's a full, Sunday slate like we just had over this past weekend. I'll play some bets. I'll start a competition where we can do pick'em leagues, or kind of straight up picks. You can pick on over unders, totals. It's a lot of fun. You got to go check out Better Edge, and you can bet against your friends. You can bet against communities. You can just bet by yourself if you really want to. You can come bet against me, and you can win money from me because I oftentimes will lose, and that's your gain. So you can come join me. And you can go check out Better Edge at betteredge.com. That's BETTOR edge.com. If you go visit betteredge.com/links and you use the promo code LINKS upon sign up, you can get $20 on us. That's $20 in free play. So go give it a try. If nothing else, use that $20, and if you don't like it, you can find something else, but I know that you will love it, because I got sucked into it a while ago, and I will never use anything else. So go check out Better Edge and Homage. And as I mentioned, we do have another partnership that I want to note, and that is through Playback. A lot of you are familiar with Playback. It's basically, you can live stream games. It's a community, basically watch party. And it's, a lot of WNBA outlets are doing it right now. A lot of NBA outlets are doing it. Any sport, really. Basically, what you do is you join myself, and we're going to be partnering with Canis Hoopus, who I also write for. But Jack Borman from Canis Hoopus, the site manager over at Canis Hoopus, him and I will be leading what we call Lynx Live on Playback. So we'll be watching select away games for fans this year, and we will make sure that the schedule well enough in advance. Actually, we will be, when this podcast comes out, you will already see the schedule for the month of June, which you can find on our social media, find anywhere on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, Hitting the Hardwood. But when it comes to Lynx Live, what we will do is we will either stream a live game, or we will rewatch games that have taken place, or that that took place earlier in the year, or maybe the night before, or a couple nights before. But Jack and I will be what is called on stage. So we'll basically be talking while the live stream is going. And Lynx fans can, if let's say it's a live game, you can come watch the game. You can watch the stream with us. You can hear Jack and I talk about anything under the moon, whether it's game related, maybe covering the team, whatever it may be. You can come join us. You can watch. You can ask questions. You don't have to ask questions. You can just watch and sit in the room and watch the game and listen to us. You can even mute us if you want, which I kind of hope I can do that to Jack a few times. Hopefully he's listening to this and he hears that. But you can join Lynx Live and ask questions, watch the stream, listen to Jack and I. It'll be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited for that. So that's a new addition to our partnerships that I'm really excited about, and I know a lot of Lynx fans have already said that they can't wait to especially watch away games that maybe they won't be able to watch or they can't get on TV. I do get Bally Sports North, so if you don't get Bally Sports North, come watch the games. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm excited about the possibility of that moving forward. We'll do it throughout the season. So feel free to join us, and go to playback.tv/Lynx Live. That's LYNX Live, LIVE. It's all one word. So go visit Playback and join us and join our community over there. Another thing is, if you would like to, speaking of communities, if you'd like to show the support of Hitting the Hardwood podcast, please consider joining our Patreon community. I do offer exclusive perks, early podcasts, bonus content, you name it, merchandise, discounts on merchandise, a lot of different perks that I'm trying to incorporate over there. Obviously, I always want to hear feedback from fans and patrons on their experience. If there's something they think I'm missing, please let me know, because I want that experience to be top notch. And I want you, if you're showing your support, I want to make sure you're getting what you want and what you deserve. So please let me know. If you are a patron, if you want to come try it out, you can try a 7-day trial, test it out, and see if it's something that you're interested in. Then you can join our community, and I promise you it will be worth it. But if you are interested, please go over to patreon.com/hitting the hardwood, and you can find all of that information there. With that said, thank you so much for joining again this week. I had a blast, not only taking part in the weekend, kind of recapping everything, but I enjoy being able to share it and kind of talk about it here on this podcast. And you listening every week is a big reason for the success of all of this, and more to come. So I appreciate you listening, and we will talk to you all next week.